Welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. Now in full Technicolor. We are on video today, so we're going to be playing around with that. But you got all three of us today. We're going to be talking about not a whole lot going on at the box office, but a fair amount going on around Netflix. And then we've all been just watching a very different spread of movies on our own. So it should be fun diving into that. But let's go ahead and just jump into the Netflix top 10. So in the number one spot, we have We Can Be Heroes, followed by Pieces of a Woman at number 2, Unknown at number 3, 17 Again, number 4, Good Burger at number 5, Catch Me If You Can at number 6, Killers, number 7, SWAT, number 8, Rango, number 9, and number 10, 30 Minutes or Less. So no Illumination, which I think is already 2021's not off to a good start, if that's kind of where we're at. But it's really not a crazy lineup. I mean, it's nice to see Good Burger on there. Always a fan of that. But yeah, nothing too crazy. We Can Be Heroes still making a lot of waves. And then Pieces of a Woman, which we'll jump into probably here in just a few moments. Up there, but I'm sure some of the recent allegations and drama kind of around that has kind of pulled it back a little bit. But let's go with impressions of the movie. So I know, Nick, you saw this one, and Brennan, you saw this one a while ago as well.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's definitely going to get kind of contend for awards. That's definitely for sure. A lot of really good performances, especially Vanessa Kirby, Ellen Burstyn too, and Shia LaBeouf. But obviously, he has the allegations against him by FK Twigs, so that kind of muddies the waters there a little bit. But yeah, I think we'll kind of get into this a little more as well. But the first 30 minutes of this movie are just really, really good. Like, it's really agonizing and really tough to watch. And it just works really well. And then after that, there's 90 minutes of just stuff all over the place, which I felt was a little scattered. But I think it's weird because I think a lot of people do really like this movie. It's kind of one of those where I don't know if it's polarizing, but I think people either really like it or kind of feel a little lukewarm to it.
Yeah, I think I like it a bit more than you. I'm not in love with the film. I think that it does have some problems, but I did really enjoy it. I think mostly it is for the performances, as you said, and it is that kind of that first quarter of this film that really is the strongest aspect of it, especially the 22-minute unbroken take kind of at the beginning. And as you said, it's a tough bit to watch, but I think it's probably some of the most impressive work of the year. But the rest of the film, and especially in the second half, I do feel like there is a drag in the movie kind of after that brilliant start.
Yeah, it's just like the worst time this movie could have came out, because it's like the unbelievable bummer. Like, this is one of the most, like, because it's about Vanessa Kirby, who she's married to Shia LaBeouf, and that 22-minute long take is her going into labor at home. There's a midwife, and complications ensue, and then her child dies right after the baby's born, and it's just like, and the rest of the 90 minutes of this movie is dealing with that trauma. Mm-hmm. And just like, after watching like a coup on the Capitol this week, I feel like I'm surprised it's actually doing this well on Netflix, because I feel like a lot of people would look more for like an escape rather than like watching this just very harrowing and depressing movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually really surprising to me that it's doing this well.
That's one thing I definitely wanted to point out. I think it's incredibly surprising how well it's doing. Yeah, and to be number 2 right now at this point here after its first few days out, I think is really impressive. You look back at Mank last month, it didn't even really crack the top 7, I don't think. I think it debuted its first day in the top 10, and then it was out. So this thing to hold on to number 2 is really good for it. I think also, I don't know if you've seen this or if anyone's logged on to Netflix in the last few days, but they've really plastered it all over kind of the interface of Netflix right now. So it's really, you can't really avoid Pieces of a Woman. It's just everywhere. But yeah, it is sitting at number 2, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, did you guys kind of experience that as well, if you have logged on Netflix at all?
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job. Just in general, I feel like Netflix, they have like 50,000 Oscar contenders this year. Like, they have so many, and they're going to be like probably 5 nominees for Best Picture coming from Netflix, maybe somewhere in there. but they've all been like so far apart from each other. Like Mank was that December, then you had Ma Rainey was at the end of December, and you had a few before that as well. I feel like they've spaced them out really well, so they can kind of be like, hey, this movie is really important. Like, notice this movie, and it's not cannibalizing like there are other movies that are playing well. I guess the only one is The Midnight Sky, which I got like an award screener for, but I don't think anyone likes that movie, so who knows? But
No.
I think I think they're really pushing hard. I mean, we can talk about the Oscar stuff. I don't think this movie will get a Best Picture nominee because I feel like it's slightly too divisive as a whole. But I think Vanessa Kirby is like a shoo-in for Best Actress. And I think Ellen Burstyn is too. And I think those are like the two places that they're going to push hard for here.
I think you're right. Vanessa Kirby's definitely going to push for that. I think we'll see her name pop up a lot. And Ellen Burstyn, I didn't really like. I think she had some good monologues. I think that's really what she was there for, right? To deliver some powerful monologues about being a woman and just kind of, strength through life and stuff. But she's kind of, her name's been kind of starting to pick up a little bit more now as this movie's come out the last few days. I think everyone was looking out for Vanessa Kirby, but she's kind of, from first reactions at least, she's been the name, in my opinion, that has kind of jumped out a bit more on social media.
Yeah, I'm looking at Gold Derby right now, and so looking at their Best Supporting Actress odds. So Amanda Seyfried looks like she's probably like the go-ahead favorite at this point. And then you have Olivia Colman for The Father, which is a movie I don't think anyone has seen, but everyone's penciled that in. It's like, yeah, this movie's important, so watch out for it. And then Ellen Burstyn is 3. Then you have Yo Jung Yoon from Minari. Then you have Glenn Close from Hillbilly Elegy, which is kind of hilarious that she's in that 5 spot there. Yeah, I feel like I feel similar to you, Brennan. Like in terms of the movie itself, she didn't really necessarily wow me, but I think when you look at like the rest of the field, because even like Saoirse Ronan for Ammonite, it really like you would think that would be like a shoe-in Best Supporting Actress performance, but she's not really picking up steam. She's behind Glenn Close on Gold Derby, which is kind of amazing. So I guess it's kind of like one of those like by default that she's probably going to get nominated, but yeah, I think it's Vanessa Kirby is like the clear standout of this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think so for sure, and she's really going to be the one they push. But yeah, it'll be neat to see what happens. I think when Minari comes out, Yao Yoon-jung, as you said there, will probably do well. I mean, she's winning a lot of awards right now. She won in LA, she won in North Carolina, she's won 8 so far, Best Supporting Actress, and she's leading that so far, just from kind of head to the ground, these little critic circles. So we'll see if when Minari comes out in February, we'll see if maybe that even boosts her even more. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting, but I don't see this movie really touching anywhere besides those 2 categories.
Yeah, and I think there's like a few of those movies every year in the Oscars where it's like, oh yeah, they have like a good performance or 2, and then, but nothing else really gets nominated. I think of like Judy last year, which was basically it was just Renee Zellweger, and that was like about it, because everyone was like, yeah, this movie isn't that great, but then Renee Zellweger is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is kind of indicative of the movie as a whole for me. I guess we can get back to the movie itself, but because it's a lot of like actors acting, like these really big performances, and this is one of those movies where I think we talked a little bit about like poverty porn for Hillbilly Elegy, because it's really just wallowing in how like poor the people were. And I wouldn't say this is like a depression porn or anything like that, but it's like it's very much like it's like very, very heavy. It's very, very heavy subject matter. And it's like an easy win over for the audience to think that this is like a very important movie about things and about heavy themes, you know? But I don't think the second half of this movie particularly, or like the last 3/4, I guess, works particularly well. I would still recommend it, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I don't really have anything like super negative to say about it, but I think it's ironic because the movie's called Pieces of a Woman, but I feel like the second half is like so splintered and just like all over the place. Because it's like the second half of this movie is how about people are dealing with grief in their own different ways. Because like Vanessa Kirby like is very inward. Shia LaBeouf's character is just going all over the place, and there's like a really weird subplot where he's like banging like his lawyer or something like that. And then Ellen Burstyn is just very depressed, and she has like a very crazy background where she was like a Holocaust survivor or something like that. it's a lot of deep, heavy stuff, but I think it's more like showy and saying like, here, this movie is about things, and then rather than showing the thematic depth of like its subject matter. I feel like it's a little performative in that way.
And in that way, it does drag a little. One thing I did want to point out, though, great to see Benny Safdie. Great to see him there.
That's
Couple
true.
scenes. And then Ellen Burstyn, I didn't think this at all, but just kind of looking at her here, she's 88 years old. That's pretty crazy.
She has been around for so long. I feel like there is like a group of people who don't really, because I can't remember what her last big movie was. Maybe like Requiem for a Dream, or maybe I just can't really think of it. But like, I feel like she really hasn't been in the public eye a lot. So I feel like there isn't like there isn't like a strong, people don't have like a strong gravitation to her as they would have in years past. But she's I think it could be one of those where it's like a Lifetime Achievement Award-esque kind of Oscar win for her, or a nomination, because everyone really likes her and she's been in so many good movies over the years throughout like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So it was cool seeing her. I can't remember the last time I saw her in a movie before this.
She was in Interstellar.
She was Old Murph
For like a minute.
That's right. The hit movie The Age of Adeline.
I forgot that was a thing.
What a strange movie. But I feel like she's it kind of reminds me of like Christopher Plummer, in the sense that like, yes, he's really famous and he's like known for a lot of stuff, but he just disappeared. And then what was it, 2017, when he did All the Money in the World, and now he's just kind of everywhere again. He just did Knives Out last year, and so I feel like it's kind of that same caliber of actor, in the sense that obviously their best work is pretty much behind them, but they'll still show up and just do something every couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been working a lot. Like, I'm looking at her IMDb right now, and she has a credit for every single year. So like, she was in Lucy in the Sky last year. She's been in a lot of TV. I guess like the last time like she was like a really heavy like hitter in terms of like general film discourse rather than just like film Twitter was probably W, when she played Barbara Bush back in like 2008. But like, other than that, like, she's kind of like, it's not to say she's disappeared. Like, she's been working and she's great. But I feel like this will be the first time in a while where we're like really focused on one of her performances, you know?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I agree. And then I'm really not surprised to see We Can Be Heroes still at the top of the Netflix top 10. Just kind of getting back to that. So I'm curious, though, whether that's more of a nostalgia thing, like people are watching it and be like, yeah, I have these weird memories of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, or if it's kind of that typical Netflix thing with kids movies where it's like, well, kids are going to want to watch this like 3 times a day for the next month until the next one comes along.
Yeah, there's got to be a blend of those two factors there that's kind of keeping it atop of the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's the memes for us, very, very strong. But actually, did we talk about this movie? Like, we've all seen this movie now, right? Like, we only talked about it when we just figured out it existed for the first time, but we haven't really talked about the movie itself. I can't remember.
I this movie.
Okay. Well, I saw this movie, and it's definitely it's for kids. Like, it's, if you're 10 years old, like, you'll probably love this movie. But I was watching it just like I was Danny Glover, just being like, I'm too old for this shit. Like, it's just very, very centered towards kids, and that's not to say a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But it's just like, I'm a 25-year-old guy. Like, it's probably just it's not my thing. It's not my jam. But I think this kind of replaces like the Illumination or like the big animated movie in the top 10. Like, it's very much for kids, and basically only for kids, and you can just like put it on in the background, and just kids can be happy watching other kids with superpowers, and then they can leave you alone for a little bit, and if you're a parent, you can have your sanity back for an hour and a half.
Yeah, and then other than that, I don't think anything was too crazy. Rango, there's always got to be an animated movie on there somewhere. It's nice to see Catch Me If You Can on the list. and so I take this very lightly when I try to use the term underrated with the word Steven Spielberg, because I don't think he really has any underrated films being Steven Spielberg. But I think like as far as just his filmography goes, this is one of the least talked about, which I think is unfortunate because you kind of lose sight of a lot of his smaller stuff when you've got stuff like Jurassic Park and Jaws and Indiana Jones and Schindler's List and all the big Spielberg movies up behind it. But I really, really love Catch Me If You Can. I saw that for the first time last year, and just like watching Tom Hanks and DiCaprio kind of antagonize each other for 2 hours is a treat.
It's a good duo.
Yeah. I actually watched it for the first time this weekend. I saw it was on Netflix and I gave it a shot, and I actually agree. I think it's really fun, and DiCaprio is really dashing in it. I guess this was right after Titanic, right? Because this was like 2002. So I guess this was a big deal amongst all of the Leo followers back then. But yeah, you're right. It's like Hanks is really good, and I don't know if is that accent good in that movie. I'm not sure, but he acts his way through it really nicely. Like he has a good time with it. And DiCaprio is really good. And it's just like, it's great Spielberg direction. You got the good John Williams score going throughout it. It's just really entertaining. And it's funny how entertaining it is because it's a movie about loneliness and like dealing with like a broken home. Because it's like Leo DiCaprio's character leaves home because his parents are getting divorced. So it's crazy that the movie that entertaining can be about such like kind of sad subject matter. I guess only Spielberg can do that.
There's a pre-fame Amy Adams playing a pretty big role in the movie too. I think it's just fun because she's like
great.
Just completely ignorant to all this nonsense going on around her, around Leo's character, as he's like pretending to be a pilot and a doctor and a lawyer and just like all the crazy stuff that Frank Abagnale got into.
Really quick interjection. Speaking of Amy Adams, saw Arrival for the first time. Brilliant.
You've never seen it before?
Never.
That's
Never.
Cool. I've been meaning to rewatch that for a while.
I don't know why. I just had never watched it, but finally watched Arrival. Such a good movie. Anyways, I yield the floor.
That Denis Villeneuve guy, he can make a movie.
Yeah,
he's going places.
I hope you guys don't think we're done talking about Amy Adams because I'm going to bring her up later on too.
I'm not done talking about Amy Adams. Can we talk about her braces when she shows up in Catch Me If You Can? They're the most hilarious over-the-top braces, and she is so funny because she's just like grinning really, really hard. Like you can see her gums, just everything in her braces, and it's so funny. I love her character introduction in Catch Me If You Can. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, so that's 2002. So she's got to be what, in her mid-20s when that came out, or late 20s?
Probably early 20s by that point, because she didn't really break out until like 2007, 2008, because she did like a little stint on The Office, and then I think her first like big role would have been Enchanted, maybe.
Was this before Enchanted, right?
Yeah, because Enchanted was.
It was like
2007. That's 2007. Yeah, that's 2007. This is probably her first big role, right? Because before that, I'm actually looking at her IMDb, and she's kind of just like a lot of like single episodes in TV, and then Catch Me If You Can. So this is probably like, that's kind of funny. Like your first introduction to Amy Adams, who's gone on to be this amazing actress, is like her grinning with big massive braces. It's kind of funny when you think about it that way.
Okay, so I'd say after this, her first like big breakout role would have been in Talladega Nights, because she plays the love interest.
Oh God, what a good movie.
And then she also did an episode of Smallville, where she plays like a vampire that sucks the fat out of people.
Great. I need to see that. That's amazing. It's better. I can wash out the feeling of Hillbilly Elegy by watching some of her other work. Oh my God, I can't get over how bad she's in that movie. It's so bad. I feel so bad for her because I love her and everything else pretty much. But oof, yikes.
She's got a big year coming up with the Snyder Cut. So.
And Woman in the Window.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I think that's Kings to be a bomb.
Do you remember the days where you just see that trailer before every movie, before movie theaters shut down?
It was that. What was the other one? White Boy Rick a couple years ago. I saw before every single movie. I don't know how I pulled that because I haven't thought about that movie since I saw it in theaters. Yeah,
I remember seeing the Ghostbusters a lot. The one that's coming out soon.
Yeah.
Afterlife, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, that one was like in every showing. Or What Men Want was just like beaten into my brain. Or the Tiffany Haddish one, Like a Boss.
Like a Boss, yeah.
My favorite movie of 2020, Like a Boss.
Or My Spy, I saw a lot. That just kept playing on loop.
Yeah.
And that one with the Prime Video afterwards, which is kind of ironic.
It was one of those that like it's always those movies that keep getting shuffled around a bit. So it's like they'll lead up to it and then it'll move and they're like, well, we've already started. We're not going to stop now. So
Well, to back to A Woman in the Window for a second, it's directed by Joe Wright, who
I think it's going to be great.
it could be pretty good. This is Darkest Hour, Atonement, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. He's got some he's had some good movies under his belt. That could be pretty interesting.
I think it'll be good. I'm just scared. I don't know why. I just have this weird tingling about it, that it could be bad. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
I'm going off nothing.
Yeah, I feel like that movie. I keep forgetting that was like a thing that was supposed to happen this year because it was one of those that I feel like immediately got pushed back to this year. I guess I keep forgetting it's 2001 or 2021, but yeah, we'll see. It's kind of like Goofy because she's just like afraid to go outside, and it seems like it's playing that for like Hitchcock thrills. Yeah. But I don't know. I really like Amy Adams, so except for Hillbilly.
I mean, it's got a pretty solid cast overall because Brian Tyree Henry's in there. He's just kind of been showing up in everything lately. We got Anthony Mackie, Jennifer Jason Leigh, on top of like Julianne Moore and Gary Oldman, who are in the trailer with her.
Oh. Mm-hmm. It has all the makings to be great. I just got this tingle.
I think it could be fun. Who knows? It could be. It could be one of those where it's like so absurd that it's bad, but in like the most hilarious, best way possible.
What I keep thinking too is The Girl and the Train. Is that what it's called with Emily Blunt?
The Girl on the Train? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Which I don't know why. There's honestly no connection, but for some reason when I think of this movie, I think of that movie. And I think of that movie as she has a good performance, but I think it's not a great movie.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one. I was just like, oh, that looks like a Gone Girl ripoff, so I'm just not going to see it. And no one really liked it, apparently.
Yeah. She was good in it. I think she was really good in it, but it was zany. It was wild.
Interesting.
But yeah, that was a long tangent on Amy Adams, and that we started talking about Steven Spielberg, and then we went to braces, and now we're here. But I think
see what happens when we're on video. It's amazing.
I think this is a pretty solid Netflix lineup. Good Burger is just like more memes. It kind of falls within that We Can Be Heroes vein of movies. I mean, it's just an iconic Nickelodeon movie, and it's never going to go away. At least that's my hope.
I feel like I've seen Good Burger so many times, but the only thing I can remember about it is the Welcome to Good Burger, Home of the Good Burger. It's like all I can remember. And I feel like I've seen it so many times, and I've seen so many memes about it. So maybe it's time I revisit it.
Yeah, and then like SWAT's on the top 10 list this week. And I know for a fact that I saw that movie quite a few times growing up because it was just like an action movie that was always on TV. But I can't tell you a single thing about it other than Samuel L. Jackson.
The title is hilarious. Just SWAT. Big letters.
It
sounds like a cheer.
It's important.
But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up Netflix for this week. So let's go ahead and just jump into what we've been watching lately. So we are in kind of the slower release period for the year, especially when studios are still a little anxious to see whether or not they'll actually release things as rescheduled. So I think everybody's just kind of getting into stuff we missed in 2020, wrapping up 2020 lists, and just getting into just whatever's out there. So Brennan, if you want to take it away with what you've been watching lately.
Yeah, to be honest, I won't really go into this, but I did, this past week kind of try to watch a ton of 2020s, and I think what was one of them? Sonic. I finally watched Sonic. It's not great, obviously, but I love seeing a kind of a vintage, wild Jim Carrey performance. I think it brought us back to the days of The Mask and stuff like that. But yeah, so two things I did watch this week that I did want to note were I finally took advantage of that 1 year Apple trial, which I've really been putting off, never really looked at it, but I had a reason to. So I watched Wolfwalkers and On the Rocks. Wolfwalkers was brilliant. Obviously, the hand-drawn animation, it's gorgeous. And I think, Nick, you as well saw it pretty recently. But yeah, this was a great film, and I think it's definitely one of my favorites from 2020. Obviously, we still have 2020s to come, but it was really done well. What do you think of it, Nick?
Yeah. Are we considering the movies that are coming out between now and the Oscars 2020 movies? I feel like that's like a sticking point for everybody. I don't really know what to do with that.
It's an interesting discussion. I've set a date of February 14th. That's when I'm going to cut it off, personally.
Well, what made you choose the 14th?
Because what comes out that week? Minari. So I'm just going to say that's it. I'm done.
Oh, okay.
Because I mean, the
That
Oscars
checks out.
The Oscars set the 28th of February. So it's close enough for me, and I'll be more important than the Oscars. So February 14th.
That logic makes total sense. It checks
But it
out.
seems like it seems like with the 2 month push of the Oscars and most of the other award shows, it seems like February is 2020, January is 2020, and then March is when we start 2021. But it's kind of weird. It'll be weird.
Yeah. And I guess Valentine's Day last year was kind of the last like normal week, because that was Invisible Man came out that weekend, and that was kind of the last somewhat normal release before everything shut down. So I think that's pretty fair.
That was a fun showing, Invisible Man. Little tangent here, but do you guys theaters you go to, is it pre-booked, pre-seating, or?
Yeah,
pre-booked.
Yeah, for me too. But there's this one that I went to, and they have one screen out of like the 12 they have that's not pre-booked for some reason. And it was the Invisible Man one. And I went, and I was like, okay, so Invisible Man's popular. It should be pretty busy. Get there about 15 minutes early. There's like no seats. I'm like, dang, this is like old days. Remember like being young and back before the pre-booking, it was like a scramble to get seats.
just had to walk in.
I wasn't even the last one. People came in.
Walk in like a heathen.
Couples came in after me. They had to sit apart and stuff like that. Like it was. I sat at the very front, but yeah, it was fun, good time. Missed the theaters, but yeah, back to what I did check out. So besides Wolfwalkers, which I found really good, I watched Sofia Coppola's On the Rocks, with Rashida Jones and Bill Murray. Good movie. I did enjoy it. I think like most Sofia Coppola movies, I think that it's kind of a lot of just. I think a lot of her movies are missing something, but I think it's this one even more so than the rest. It really does just feel like a buddy hangout movie, but it is fun. It's enjoyable, and Bill Murray kind of gets to strut his charm in this movie. And I would watch it for him because I like Bill Murray, but I think this performance especially, he's kind of this old guy with a lot of swag. Even if maybe he doesn't, maybe he's losing it. His daughter is embarrassed at times by what he says, but I liked him in this movie, and I enjoyed the movie for what it was. But those were the two Apple originals I watched. So we'll see if those make any award splashes.
So touching on you watching Sonic the Hedgehog, I would like to point out that was like the most consistently memeable movie throughout the year. Like Birds of Prey came, not really many good memes. Onward, kind of the same thing. But like Sonic, there was like a new meme format coming from that.
100%.
Even as far as like December. So I think there's some longevity there.
I think if they want to be nice to those visual effects artists, they'll toss it a visual effects nomination. Like it's a weak year, right? A lot of movies move, a lot of the big blockbusters, so it could sneak in there. But even then, it was a little bit shoddy at times.
Yeah,
It's the best Olive Garden movie I've ever seen.
Best Olive Garden movie? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I remember that line. That was hilarious. Talk about inserted advertising.
It's almost as bad as the Power Rangers Krispy Kreme one. Remember that one? A few years ago, where the third act takes place inside of a Krispy Kreme.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I mean, nothing comes close.
I know what you're gonna say. Nothing's gonna top the Dunkachino.
Yep. That's exactly what I was about to say.
That's peak, but that's like overt. That's like really overt. Like,
There's one. I need to. I don't have it up with me because I can't call them out officially. But there's one Twitter account I follow, and every single day they do a new version of the Dunkachino video.
I've seen that.
So it was like there was like one time where they did Dunkachino as like a 1920s silent film. So it's like the really grainy photo of like the dance, and like every so often there's like a big like title card with like all of the lines of the songs on it. It's amazing. It's one of the most amazing things I've seen. Like the amount of time that someone put into that is incredible.
We appreciate these people.
We do. We live for them, you know?
Yeah.
We're for the memes. They're for the memes. We come together. Let's build together, gentlemen.
All right. So, Nick, what have you been watching lately?
I actually watched Wolfwalkers myself recently, and I really loved that movie. I was between. You can check out my top 10 movies of the year on the .com right now. I was between that and Soul for my 10th spot. So I really like Wolfwalkers a lot. It's then the most recent movie from Cartoon Saloon, who's done a lot of really good animated movies over the year. I think the last one they did was The Breadwinner a few years ago. It was nominated for Best Animated Movie. But yeah, kind of just to echo everything Brennan said, that movie's really, really good. But kind of what we were saying before with Pieces of a Woman, I think I picked a really bad week to watch The Dark and the Wicked, which is one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen in my life. This is a movie that it came out in like October or something like that, and I was catching up for it for my best of the year list. But it's from Bryan Bertino, who did the Strangers movie that came out in like 2008, which is like kind of one of the more nihilistic movies to come out because it was just like people invading someone's house just because they could. And there's the really famous line when they say that, where they explain that to the people. And this is another movie that's like unbelievably nihilistic because it's basically just like there's the father in the family. He lives on a remote farm and he's dying. He's on his last legs and he's probably going to die within the week. So it's the two kids coming to the rural farm to just kind of console the mother and deal with the dad. And so it's just a week straight of these people kind of just like dealing with like grief and like their dad about to die. And they turn that into a horror movie. So like their grief and regret is like this unseeable monster that's kind of terrorizing them throughout the week. And yeah, it's really, really depressing. And it's even worse because I watched it the day of the coup attempt. Like I turned it off and then I turned on, like I looked on Twitter and it was just like all the videos were coming in of everyone invading the Capitol. So it was just like, well, I just picked an awful day to watch this.
Nothing good happening.
It's a really good movie. It's one of those, you have to be in the right state of mind to watch it because it's so depressing. But it's really, really good. It's really well acted. Not really much bad I can say about it, except it's just unbelievably depressing. So I guess your mileage may vary on that because it's just 90 minutes of people coming apart and like basically like losing themselves and like occasionally mutilating themselves because of the power of this unseeable monster. So it's it's great fun for all the family. Watch it with your loved ones and your little kids.
It's quite on the level of Jack and Jill then for personal pain and suffering.
Easy, definitely.
Yeah, The Strangers is one of those movies that like I couldn't not try to distract myself because it's just so creepy in the sense that like you always see where the killers are for the most part, and they're just always just like standing on the very edge of the frame. So I'm a big fan of anything done by that team.
Yeah, and there's nothing like super like, because the thing about this movie is you don't see the monster, and obviously that's a metaphorical thing, right? Because like it's a manifestation of their grief and suffering, but it's just they show like grief, like their ever growing grief between the days. Like they'll do like what happened on Monday, and it's like all this bad shit happened, and then Tuesday it gets a little worse, and it's like all the way out through to Sunday. And yeah, there's really not like too much, like it's not too complicated. It's just really, really depressing. And then the movie's over and you're like, well, I just kind of am sad about everything. So I had a dark night on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I went down a little bit of a wormhole there, or a black hole. It was not good.
Yeah, fortunately, I didn't have that problem. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a thought, and that was, what if I watched every Muppet movie? And so I'm a big fan of the original, like the 1979 version. I remember seeing the like quasi reboot. It's not like a full reboot, but it's definitely a reboot with Jason Segel. And then I like have vague memories of seeing Muppets Take Manhattan. But the only one that I was firmly like, yeah, I could, tell you the plot of this movie was the first one. So I watched all 8 of them. And honestly, I don't think there's a single bad Muppets movie. Like there's definitely some that aren't as good as others. I think the very first one's the best one. But The Great Muppet Caper, which is the second one, came out in the early 1980s, has the 2 best recurring jokes I've ever heard. I'm never going to watch a comedy again because it's not going to top it. But basically, there's like this one recurring gag in that movie. So it's a mystery movie, basically. And Miss Piggy's been framed for stealing Diana Riggs jewelry. And so basically, like a big joke is that Kermit and Fozzie are identical twins. And so there's just like repeated visual gags of people like confusing Kermit the Frog with Fozzie Bear. There's like a picture in a newspaper at one point. It's like Frog marries Pig, and then it's a picture of Fozzie Bear and Miss Piggy. And it's just, it's so dumb. And then there's another one where in that movie, the Muppets are all like talking about what their plan is. And they're like, yeah, we need to catch the thieves red-handed. And every time somebody says that, one of the other characters will like wander in and be like, well, what color are their hands now? And so the first time you hear it, you're like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then the second time it happens, I was like, okay, that's actually pretty funny. And then the third time, I just died.
I love that kind of humor where it's something about it makes me laugh, where it's like they double, like whatever the movie is, they double down so hard on the joke that it wasn't funny, but then it becomes hilarious. Like they just keep going. It's kind of like the show hasn't really aged particularly well, but it's kind of like the Family Guy thing where it's like they're like so committed to how like stupid the joke is that it becomes amazing. So every time that happens, it's like tip of the cap. Like it's just, I love it.
Yeah. And then there's like, I think I've come to the conclusion that like the more like tame the premises of the movie, the better the Muppets thrive. So it's like, I'd say the bad ones are the ones where it's like Treasure Island or Muppets from Space or Muppets Most Wanted, where it's just like this insane premise. But like the ones where it's really funny is where it's like everything's normal except the fact that like there are these talking frogs walking around.
Simplicity, it works best, right?
Because like the first one is just they're trying to take a trip to Hollywood. The second one, they're just trying to solve a mystery. The third one, they're just trying to make a musical. And it's like when it gets really weird with it is where I think the movies don't work. And I think that's like the problem with the most recent one, because the Jason Segel one, which he co-wrote, is just like pretty simple, getting the band back together. And then the sequel is like this super crazy like international intrigue mystery. But there is a really good Seventh Seal joke early on in the movie. Where they're trying to figure out what kind of sequel they want to make. And one of them's like, what about a movie that's about the existentialism of death and life? And then it's just like a shot of, I think, like one of the Muppets playing chess with death.
Isn't that where the like the bad
the meme
Kermit meme comes from? Yeah. Right?
I get the memes from, now. Right? I'd never seen that one. And it's just like all these meme formats that I've seen for a couple years. I'm like, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah, it's good. The more you know.
You hate the Happy Time Murders, right? Like you're
I wasn't a big fan, even though it is like it's still a Brian Henson thing. But I just like I didn't vibe.
Yeah. It's definitely, that's like Muppet movie adjacent, because it's not Muppets, but it's obviously the Henson production, right?
It's in the same universe.
Yeah, it's the same cinematic universe, the Henson extended universe.
And I was one of the 5 people that watched the Muppets mockumentary that was on ABC like 5 years ago. So,
is that good?
I was pretty solid. It's just like it's one of those things where I couldn't see anybody else watching it, But as someone who like grew up watching the Muppet Show, I was like, I have to watch this. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no way. As an 18-year-old at the time, I wasn't gonna turn that on every Tuesday night.
I think it's hilarious how, because there's that recurring bit in Forgetting Sarah Marshall where Jason Segel's running the vampire play, and apparently he wanted to make a movie out of that vampire play, but then Apatow was like, no, just put it in Forgetting Sarah Marshall and move on with your day. And then he was like, fine, I'll just go make the Muppets.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny to look back and be like, oh, he just like really loved this and wanted to do this the whole time. And then he finally got a shot. It's really funny.
That's a funny little bit. That's a really good piece of information.
Yeah. I'm probably paraphrasing it like a little bit, but he was
No,
just
that's
like,
right.
I want to do Muppet stuff, and this stuff is really funny to me. And then Apatow was like, cool.
No, like because the first pitch for Forgetting Sarah Marshall was literally just his Dracula musical, and then
That's
they're
what
like,
it was.
We can't
that's
sell
what I was
this.
Yeah. He's like, no,
That's
that's a bit in your movie that goes with other stuff. And then he's like, well, all right.
But
fits
circling back to Amy Adams, watching the first of the reboots, the Muppets, is just like the entire time she's on screen, I'm like, this is Academy Award nominee Amy Adams, and she's just like, there's one scene where some guy is like spraying a window down with a garden hose, and she's having like a big dramatic crying moment in her song that she just sang. It's just like, it's fun to watch those two actors in particular just like have fun in this crazy world, and like this big like Singing in the Rain-esque musical number that opens it up. And it's just like, it's a very good movie, and I think Jason Segel is a lot of the reason why, just his writing and his performance.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone is really happy when they're in a Muppets movie. Like everyone's just having a really good time. Because you have, who is it? It's Michael Caine is in a Muppets Christmas Carol, right?
Well, they're all just like bloated with all these cameos and like these tiny roles. Like Jack Black plays himself getting kidnapped in the Muppets reboot. Steve Martin has a really big bit in the original Muppet movie. Like Mel Brooks is like a electric brain doctor in the first one. So there's just like a lot of these little fun like celebrities being like, yeah, of course I'm going to be in a Muppets movie.
Are they all on Disney Plus at this point?
No, so I had to rent the Muppets Take Manhattan and Muppets from Space, but every other one was on Disney Plus.
Okay. I feel like, I don't know if I've actually seen all of them. I might have to do that at some point. Maybe after this week when I need something happy. After watching The Coup and The Dark and the Wicca, I need something to make myself feel a little better.
Muppets Marathon.
Muppet therapy.
Yeah.
I also got, Santa overdid this year, and I got the Bergman Criterion set. So I also have 30 movies of just existentialism to get into. So maybe I can go down a different black hole, or I can just watch the Muppets. We'll see.
Yeah, the
Priorities.
family videos are going bankrupt. So I went and like cleaned out one of the stores and upped my shelf a little bit. So I have a bunch of that stuff to get through.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of grasping for anything at this point. It's like, because I feel like next week is kind of the big first week of movie releases, because we have like One Night in Miami, I think, comes out on Prime Video. There's a MLK FBI documentary that's coming out that's really interesting that I got a chance to see early, but I feel like until Thursday or Friday of next week, like I don't know what to watch, because I don't want to catch up with Monster Hunter or like anything else that came out. So I feel like I need to buy myself some time until things come out again.
And you haven't seen One Night in Miami?
I've seen One Night in Miami. It's really good.
I've seen it.
So
Okay.
maybe, yeah, I don't really have anything else new to watch.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of stuck in it again. Who knows?
Stuff.
But yeah, that's everything we've been watching lately. That's lots of Muppets and 2020 content, and yeah, we'll start to ramp up. I think February is actually a little bit more packed than it normally would be, which would be nice. And then, I mean, it really just kind of depends on what the U.S. is looking like COVID-wise, and as the vaccine rolls out. I mean, I think we'll probably see some of these larger early in the year releases get pushed back. Like Chaos Walking's already been pushed back till March. It was supposed to come out in a couple weeks, but now that's been moved. So we'll see what happens.
What's the next big movie? I guess it's Little Things, right? the Denzel movie. It's coming out on HBO.
Yeah,
Right.
and then Judas and the Black Messiah is February 12th, and I think that's Minari's like big US release as well.
Malcolm and Marie is on February 5th, I believe, too.
Mm. Yeah.
So there's a bit like coming up. And then March is where a lot of the I'd say bigger stuff, but like Tom and Jerry. Oh, Tom and Jerry is actually last week of February, but March is like Coming to America and Raya and the Last Dragon and The Kingsman and Morbius. Remember that movie? So it's like where the year should pick up.
Yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. My guess is that some of those move back. I kind of just I feel like Chaos Walking. I wanted to turn it to the New Mutants,
Yeah.
where it's just like I'm not even sure it exists, but it's gonna come out at some point, and then it keeps getting pushed back, and then we eventually watch it in 2023 or something like that.
I still didn't watch The New Mutant, so it doesn't exist to me yet. So
I haven't either. I think I want to keep it as the bit where I just don't think it actually is a movie.
yeah, it's not real.
It'll be like that Orson Welles movie that came out like 50 years after he died.
Oh yeah, the Other Side of the Wind. That movie's really good, by the way.
When Tom Holland dies in like 2103, Chaos Walking will finally come out.
Yeah, it's vaulted till then.
But yeah, that is this week's episode of the MovieBabble Podcast. We'll be back next week talking about more movies. Nick maybe talking about his Muppet takes. We'll see. But remember, you can always check us out. You can always check us out online at moviebabble.com.